one. I'm going to spray water. Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Divardhari Yashodanandana Braja Yashodanandana Braja Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jana Vallabha Divardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Divardhari Yashodanandana Yashodanandana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for inviting me to come. So, well, I was thinking as I was driving up that, everybody else that was driving on the road is like, I gotta go and do what I don't want to do. And then as soon as you come in here, it's like, it's a whole different level of spiritual energy. So we're reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 14, Pregnancy of Diti in the evening. And we're just starting this chapter. And so we'll be reading several verses, and then I'm talking a little bit about verse number 12 today. A lot of the verses don't have purports, or very short ones, if they do. So we chant the Sanskrit for the, or what do you do to the one that we're actually discussing? You just read the.
After we read the section.
Yeah.
Then we go into the section.
Oh, okay. So translations only up until verse 12. Okay, that's cool.
Is the 12 the verse that section ends with?
Yeah.
For the schedule, it says 15, but we can end at 12.
We can read verses 1 through 12 or 1 through 15 and then focus on 12.
Right. Yeah, okay. So
Shukdev Goswami said, after hearing from the great sage Maitreya about the Lord's incarnation as Varaha, Vidura, who had taken a vow, begged him with folded hands to please narrate further transcendental activities of the Lord, since he, Vidura, did not yet feel satisfied.
Sri Vidura said, O chief amongst the great sages, I have heard by disciplic succession that Hiranyaksha, the original demon, was slain by the same form of sacrifices the personality of Godhead Lord bore.
What was the reason, O Brahman, for the fight between the demon king and the Lord boar, while the Lord was lifting the earth as his pastime?
My mind has become very inquisitive, and therefore I am not satisfied with hearing the narration of the Lord's appearance. Please, therefore, speak more and more to a devotee who is faithful.
The great sage Maitreya said, O warrior, the inquiry made by you is just befitting a devotee because it concerns the incarnation of the personality of Godhead. He is the source of liberation from the chain of birth and death for all those who are otherwise destined to die.
By hearing these topics from the sage Narada, the son of King Utanapada Dhruva was enlightened regarding the personality of Godhead and ascended to the abode of the Lord, placing his feet over the head of death.
The history of the fight between the Lord as a boar and the demon Hiranyaksha was heard by me in a year long ago, as it was described by the foremost of the demigods, Brahma, when he was questioned by the other demigods.
Diti, daughter of Daksha, being afflicted with sex desire, begged her husband, Kashyapa, the son of Marichi, to have intercourse with her in the evening in order to beget a child.
The sun was setting, and the sage was sitting in trance after offering oblations to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, whose tongue is the sacrificial fire.
in that place, the beautiful Diti expressed her desire. O learned one, Cupid is taking his arrows and distressing me forcibly as a mad elephant troubles a banana tree.
Therefore, you should be kind towards me by showing me complete mercy. I desire to have no sons, and I am much distressed by seeing the opulence of my co-wives. By performing this act, you will become happy.
A woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband, and a husband like you will become famous by having children because you are meant for the expansion of living.
In the days long ago, one father, the most opulent Daksha, who was affectionate to his daughter, asked each of us separately whom we should prefer to select as our husband.
Our well-wishing father Daksha, after knowing our intentions, handed over 13 of his daughters unto you, and since then we have all been faithful.
O lotus-eyed one, kindly bless me by fulfilling my desire. When someone in distress approaches a great person, his plea should never go in vain.
Vartaryaptorumananam Lokana Vishate Yashaha Patir Bhavad Vidho Yasam Rajaya Nanujayate.
Lokana Vishate Yasha. Patir Bhava Vito Yasam.
Jayate. Bhartaya Kurmananam. Lokana Vishate Yasha. Patir Bhavat Yasam. Prajayanam Jayate. Bhartari. By the husband. Apta Urumananam. Of those who are beloved. Lokan. In the world. Avishate. Spreads. Yashaha. Fame. Patihi. Husband. Bhavat Vidaha. Like your good self. Yasam. Of those whose. Prajaya. By children. Nanu. Certainly. Jayate. Expands. Translation: a woman is honored in the world by the benediction of her husband, and a husband like you will become famous by having children because you are meant for the expansion of living entities. Purport: according to Rishabhadev, one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. Human life is the only opportunity to get out of the material scene, which is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and diseases. Every human being should be given the opportunity to take advantage of this human form of life. And a father like Kashyapa is supposed to beget good children for the purpose of liberation. Om Jnana Timidantasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyas Cha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Chaputitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this chapter, like many chapters in the Bhagavatam, starts with, it comes on the tail end of some questions. Why did this happen? Well, how did he get in a fight? What was going on? And how did that happen? So I was thinking how the whole Bhagavatam is like a troubleshooting manual for human life. If you ever had problems with, like, say, a washing machine, it's just not happening. It's not agitating. It's not spinning. What do? You Google it. You go to YouTube University. It's like, what do other people do when there's this situation? What does the manufacturer say? Because something's not, my desires are not being fulfilled is the problem. And I want to fulfill them. So we have to take some necessary steps. So here we have this whole exchange between Kashyapa and Diti. It's a very famous exchange. You hear her point of view, and then his point of view, and then of course Bhagavatam is the third point of view, which is the God's point of view. Here Kashyapa is performing some meditation. Things are going along nicely for him. He's getting into it, and then bam, something comes that he did not expect. His wife comes to him and says, "Can we have sex now?" Like, what? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary to this verse, says that he was in the sacrificial arena. Just imagine you have a sacrifice going on here, a fire sacrifice, and people chanting mantras, and then your wife comes and come on, can we have sex now? It's like, no. and this is like, we require a troubleshooting guide for times like this, because this is what life throws at us. At any moment, something can come along and bam, now you've got to deal with this. So this is Kashyapa's situation. He's got to deal with it. He's a married man. He has to deal with the viewpoint of his wife. He's got to take her into consideration. But what she's asking, as we find out, is just not according to time, place, and circumstance. But as we also find out, Krishna's got some super, super ulterior motive. This is why things are going on in this extraordinary way. That's what happens in the Bhagavatam. There's some ordinary circumstance, somebody's going along and living their life, and then boom, some extraordinary thing happens to them. And then how do they deal with it? It's all to just show us, from that Krishna is ultimately in control of everything. We want to think that we can be peaceful and control the course of our own lives. But how many times do we get shown that this is just not possible? It's just not going to happen. But to the degree that we're conscious that Krishna is in fact control, as the overarching supreme controller of everyone in everyone's heart, making your life very interesting, more interesting than you might want it to be, then, and if we're okay with that, to the degree that we're conscious of that overarching control, then, there's nothing ultimately to fear. Because what does Krishna say? Sarva dharman parityaja, surrender to me, ma shuchaha, you've got nothing to worry about. Everything is ultimately cool, even though in the moment you might be like, yeah. But these moments of trial and extraordinary circumstance, they don't feel easy, since we're conditioned living beings, meaning our mind is not really our own. Like one time, my mother called me aside after I had, been trying to practice devotional service for some time, and she said, "I want to talk to you." So she went out to the garage, and which is where she went at my grandfather's house to smoke, because he didn't like smoking in the house, because he had quit smoking and he had zero tolerance for smoke in the house. So my mother took me out to the garage and she lit up a cigarette, and she was smoking her cigarette. She said, "Is your mind your own?" And of course, she is my mom. I didn't really give her the business. It's like, "Mom, look what you're doing." Is your mind your own? I didn't go there. But that's the question: is our mind our own? And what we find out here, and what we find out in the commentary of Srila Vishwanath and Prabhupada here, is that what's being asked here, it seems like, is for sense gratification right in the middle of an act of self-realization. Kashyapa is doing his thing. He's meditating, and it says he was really meditating. In Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary, he was fully in samadhi. He was not in his body at that time. He was fully meditating on Lord Vishnu, the Lord of all sacrifice, and then somebody's tugging at his dhoti for a different aim in mind. And then what we learn from this, one of the many things we can learn, I can't address all the things, but is that sense gratification and self-realization are inversely proportional. We like to think that, yes, Krishna consciousness is the greatest thing, self-realization. But on the other hand, there's sense gratification, which I also want. Can't they both go up at the same time? And no, that's not how it works. If sense gratification goes up, your self-realization will go down. And sense gratification goes up, your self-realization will go down. It's just the way, that's how a scale works. And of course, if you're a kid and you get one of those scales, you want to play with it and make both go up simultaneously, see? But that's not the way it works. There's going to be some problem. There was a time early in like 1970, Prabhupada was in Bhaktivedanta Manor. He was Los Angeles. He was in Los Angeles. And he was saying, because somebody had just given him this really beautiful gold lame bead bag, some really gorgeous thing. And somebody had also made this coat for him, which was this long saffron coat, had little peacock feather tassels on it. And he was standing in front of the deities, very intensely praying. And this is right after he had given a class to the devotees, talking about the nature of the conditioned soul and the liberated soul. He was saying that a liberated soul cannot fall down. And in this class, he said that I cannot fall down. He said to the devotees, he said, you can fall down, but I cannot fall down. And then he was in his room with a couple of disciples. And one of the devotees asked Prabhupada, when you were standing in front of the deities, can I ask what you were praying? And maybe you know what he said. He said, I was praying to the deities that I may not fall down. They said, but Prabhupada, you said in the class that you cannot fall down. He said, yes, that's because I'm always praying that I cannot fall down. He also said that you Western boys and girls, your problem is that you don't have a healthy fear of Maya, which is a problem.
Enough of it.
Yeah, enough fear of Maya. But has anybody here ever played competitive sports? Yeah. So in competitive sports, there are rules, right? I mean, you can't have a sport without rules. Like tennis requires a net. You know, if you're going to run cross country, you can't just cut across. You have to follow the course. Otherwise, you can't win. There's no meaning to the game. There's no meaning to winning. Similarly, has anybody ever tried to bake? Anybody a baker here? Like breads and cakes and cookies? So you know that there are rules for properly baking goods. You can't just have the oven at any old temperature or add any old amount of flour or water or cook it for any old amount of time. If you want the actual outcome, you got to follow some rules. So in the same way, self-realization has some rules, and which, if they're not followed, you don't get self-realization. You don't get the experience of Krishna consciousness that you may want. And if you, of course, Krishna is very kind and very magnanimous, and he will let you cheat yourself if you want, but then you don't win. You get a hollow feeling, and your so-called winning streak will not last. So in the same way, someone who's committed to the goal of self-realization, there's some rules you have to follow. You know, if the net is down, you don't win. And in the same way, those who are committed to Krishna consciousness pledge to follow very specific rules of behavior. And one of those rules is no illicit sex. You know, at the time of initiation, the spiritual master will likely ask you, okay, what are the rules? Just to make sure you know what game you're playing. And you say, okay, these are the rules. And a follow-up question might be, do you know what those rules mean? And since today's verse has to deal very squarely head-on with the request of Diti to get a son in the natural way, and the purport, Prabhupada says, that one should not become a father or mother unless one is confident that he can beget children whom he can deliver from the clutches of birth and death. So that's serious business. That's another take on the whole process of procreation than most people, especially in this country, really want to think about, contemplate, what to speak of do. So then the question becomes, okay, what is, let's say, licit sex? And then what's the difference between that and illicit sex, which a committed practitioner of Krishna consciousness says, I will do that. I will take a vow in front of you and everybody else. That's what I'm going to do. So there is, this is not a subject for speculation. This is in the rule book. It's in the troubleshooting guide. There's a purport, it's right here in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in plain view. This is from the 7th canto, 12th chapter, and this is the Perfect Society for Spiritual Classes. This is text number 11. It says, I'll just read the translation and purport because it's good to know this stuff as we go through life. And you wonder, why am I doing what I'm doing? This is why. This is the translation. All the rules and regulations apply equally to the householder and the sannyasi, the member of the renounced order of life. The grihasta, however, is given permission by the spiritual master to indulge in sex during the period favorable for procreation. And here's the commentary. It is sometimes misunderstood that a grihasta, a householder, is permitted to indulge in sex at any time. This is a wrong conception of grihasta life. In spiritual life, whether one is a grihasta, vanaprastha, sannyasi, or brahmachari, everyone is under the control of the spiritual master. For brahmacharis and sannyasis, there are strong restrictions on sexual indulgence. Similarly, there are strong restrictions for grihastas. Grihastas should indulge in sex life only in accordance with the order of the guru. Therefore, it is mentioned here that one must follow the orders of the spiritual master, Guru Vritir Vikalpena. When the spiritual master orders, the grihasta may accept sex life. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:11, Dharmaviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi. Indulgence in sex life without disobedience to the religious rules and regulations constitutes a religious principle. The grihasta is allowed to indulge in sex life during the period favorable for procreation and in accordance with the spiritual master's order. If the spiritual master's orders allow a grihasta to engage in sex life at a particular time, then the grihasta may do so. Otherwise, if the spiritual master orders against it, the grihasta should abstain. The grihasta must obtain permission from the spiritual master to observe the ritualistic ceremony of garbhadana samskara. That's the whole involved procedure mentioned in the Manu Samhita that one is supposed to undergo before even conceiving children. Then he may approach his wife to beget children, otherwise not. A brahmana generally remains a brahmachari throughout his entire life. But although some brahmanas become grihastas and indulge in sex life, they do so under the complete control of the spiritual master. The kshatriya is allowed to marry more than one wife, but this also must be in accordance with the instructions of the spiritual master. It is not that because one is a grihasta, he may marry as many times as he likes and indulge in sex life as he likes. This is not spiritual life. In spiritual life, one must conduct one's whole life under the guidance of the guru. Only one who executes his spiritual life under the direction of the spiritual master can achieve the mercy of Krishna. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasadaha. If one desires to advance in spiritual life, but he acts whimsically, not following the orders of the spiritual master, he has no shelter. Yasya prasadan nagati kutopi. Without the spiritual master's order, even the grihasta should not indulge in sex life. So, simply put, sex is for babies. And the goal of self-realization is love of God, not imagining that you love God or believing in God, but actually falling in love with God. And there's a way to do that, and the way to do that is very clearly outlined. There's no room for making stuff up. It's pretty spelled out, because that's the thing. If we take vows to follow these rules, because the rules enable us to think clearly. It's not that they're moral rules or that I will now be a good person because I vow to, not do these bad things. But these are things that make us crazy. If you look at it, illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, all these things lead people to the nut house. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. It just drives you on and on in sense gratification, and it makes you into a crazy person. And the first principle of Krishna consciousness is you should be sane. That's a good starting point. Hare Krishna. There's so much more that can be said, but I know time is limited here, so maybe there's some questions or comments. Yeah, now we're going to go.
Chandra, can you go back to the verse 12? Sometimes I don't really understand like the cultural context of this, because it takes two to tango, and I don't understand why Kashyapa can't just be like tomorrow,
Good point, of course. Prabhupada addresses that very thing. He gives the example of Haridas Thakur. He says Haridas Thakur was in a similar situation. He was chanting his japa, minding his own business, and then a very attractive young girl comes along and said, "How about it?" And Haridas Thakur says, later. It's okay with you, later. And he says he was able to do that because he was firmly meditating on the holy name of the Lord. And you might think that Kashyapa was also firmly meditating. So why didn't he do the same thing? There are numerous things going on here. One of the things I mentioned was that ultimately Krishna had some plan that he had to do the deed, as we say. But he also points out that Kashyapa, that was a point of weakness for him. And you should take note of that, that he could have just said later, but he didn't. So that's the test, that's the test that we may be presented with at a certain point. How strong are we in our determination? Our determination leads to our desires, and our desires lead to our destiny. So if you want your destiny to be purely spiritual, then your determination has to be really strong. Somebody asked Prabhupada once, why is Maya so strong? And Prabhupada didn't waste a second. He said, because your determination is not very strong. So yeah, like so many examples in the Bhagavatam, you get the positive example, the negative example. This is one of them negative examples. Don't do what Kashyapa did, or you'll be sorry. So that's one way that the question could be answered. Somebody else might answer it better, but is that okay, or was there something more to it? Yeah. Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you for class.
Hare Krishna.
So this might be a little bit long-winded. I'll try to keep it short. There's a common thing that I see of devotees feeling like we need to be at the highest place in our spiritual life, like we need to be perfect right away. And Prabhupada didn't expect that of us, and even in other places, he did have leniency for the Grihastha ashram. Like, yes, that is the highest standard, and we build up to that. If you can't do it, because what would be awful is to see people feeling so much guilt and shame because of desires that they've been living with for lifetimes, not being able to suppress them, that they then feel like they can't practice Krishna consciousness. And so I was wondering if you would speak to that, to like, yes, this is the highest standard, and Prabhupada did express that you're not breaking your vow if you can't follow that exact standard within marriage. But that is what we're building up to. That should be our goal. That should be our focus in meditation and So I'm curious if you could kind of speak to that, because I feel like we might get really hard on ourselves at times when we can't be like at the top standard if we can't be.
Yeah. At the same time, Prabhupada he wanted everybody to have a chance to practice Krishna consciousness. He didn't want to exclude anybody, no matter where they're coming from, what they're doing. It's like, just please take to this Krishna consciousness, just chant Hare Krishna. He also said, if you're going to take a vow, then you should be prepared to keep that vow and to know what the vows mean. You don't just take a vow and then break the vow, because then what is the meaning of taking the vow? That's another thing about Western so-called culture. We have no concept of vows, but we think, well, I was 19 when I said I would do X, but now I've learned so much, and now I've learned that life is hard, and how can I be expected to maintain what I said when I was 19 and young and crazy? Well, people get married for the same reasons when they're young and crazy. And how would it do to just say, well, I'm through with you now that I know you better. And I was young and crazy when I said I'd love you till the end of time, and now I'm praying for the end of time, as the old song goes. How would that fly with your marriage partner? That wouldn't go. Vows are meant to be either taken or not. He would say, why did you take that vow if you weren't prepared to follow that vow? That's why I made a point of reading this from the Bhagavatam. This isn't just a matter of opinion or an isolated conversation, but this is plain and simple the definition of what we mean when we vow to practice. We're going to follow this vow. So he was at the same time lenient and at the same time very compassionate, and also very very, very stern as a father would be. You vowed to take this, and then why are you abandoning us? This is not human life. You would be very strong sometimes. That's one picture of Prabhupada that sometimes doesn't get painted so publicly or widely, that Prabhupada could be so strong and so uncompromising. But ultimately, if your goal is self-realization, if that's your sole goal in life, that's the most important thing to you, then you'll take these vows very, very seriously. And of course, if you break a vow, you should feel bad. That's one of the points of advancing in spiritual life. And this is something that when I was working with Krishna.com, we spent a whole lot of time on this very point of regret and repentance, that you can find so many places where, like for example, Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed by that Brahmin Shringi, after he draped the snake over his father, he was feeling terrible about it. He's just, oh my gosh, I was angry and I did something I shouldn't have done under the circumstances, and now I just feel so terrible. And Prabhupada says in the purport to that yes, regret and repentance are purifying agents for one's advancement in spiritual life. So while everything, as you say, is within our experience and reasonable, regret and repentance are also very reasonable and necessary elements. We should feel bad about the things that we have done that are contrary to the laws of Dharma. And we should, from whatever point we are, make every endeavor we can with all the help that we can to make progress from there. And also be very honest with whomever our spiritual guides, mentors, spiritual masters are. I just can't follow these rules. If we can't, and then, well, maybe you're not ready to get initiated. And it's as simple as that. It's not that if that's not the case for you, then you're a failure. You're persona non grata. You're out the door. You can't play with the other in reindeer games, or you're certainly included. But be honest with yourself and take vows when you're ready, and wait until you are. Hare Krishna. Yes, now we're going
to. Yeah, thank you for talking on this and talking about. Sometimes when we read it, it just sounds like moreover on the comment I had earlier, the question I had earlier. Like when we read it, it sounds like it's like DT at fault. Like it's like she came and like bugged her husband just did that to pacify her. And sometimes I just feel like that's kind of like paints women in a weird light, and like the husband-wife dynamic. I don't really know if I have a specific question, but how am I wrong in that?
Advaitacharya Prabhu has the answer to that. Oh, okay. I thought I was off the hook for a moment. No, obviously, as you said earlier today, it does take two to tango. And we hear this is from Diti's side. Diti wants a son, and evidently Kashyapa did too, or else he would have acted differently. He would have said no. So yeah, it does take two. Yeah. That's all I can say about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill. Very enlightening. I want to see if there is a healthy balance following up on Premamrita. On one side, we have this healthy repentance and regret. And then on the other side, there's this feeling of shame and guilt. I guess both of them can be unhealthy, and both of them can be healthy if you can speak more on healthy forms of realizing one's mistake, or shortcoming, should I say.
Yeah.
It's not really a mistake, it's a shortcoming. and yet feeling encouraged to try better without that kind of a burden of, the heavy burden of guilt and shame.
Right.
Especially from the environment
Right.
that you are trying to improve yourself.
Yes.
An environment that you want to feel supported.
Yeah.
When you feel that from the environment, then you kind of lose esteem.
Yeah.
Could you speak more on that?
One thing I've seen, I've spent some time with friends and family in 12-step groups talking about alcohol and narcotics addiction. And anyone who's maybe had a similar experience can witness to the fact that a successful 12-step group, people trying to recover from addiction, they're very, very honest about their own shortcomings. They have to be for their own survival, because often it is a matter of life and death. And it would be nice if devotees had a similar forum. And I believe that it's possible to have that with, maybe not with everybody, maybe not in an open forum, public square, hi, I'm Ekendra Das, and I'm a sense enjoyer. Hi, Ekendra. This week I did X, Y, and Z. Oh, we'd rather not hear it, Ekendra, But with somebody with whom you have a real deep relationship of trust, you know that they're not going to condemn you or call you a loser, that somebody's going to understand, yeah, it is a struggle. It is a struggle. And we're, guess what, all struggling. But that level of honesty is really required for somebody to make spiritual progress. That's where that seems to me to be the bouncing point from negative to positive. You talked about the regret and repentance and the concomitant problem of the burden of guilt and shame that it's possible you can go around your whole life with, and then not open up to anybody and just be consumed with it and think that I have to go away. I can't even live in this environment. Everybody's expecting me to be so pure and perfect, and I'm just not there. And maybe the Episcopals will accept me, It's not a joke. I have friends who have that exact line of thinking. But we need that so much as devotees. That's why it's so essential to have persons whom we trust, whom we look up to, whom we can tell, look, I have this problem. What do I do? So it's not a question of being perfect. Like Prabhupada was talking to, he was in India, and he was talking to maybe a member of parliament, or saying, I have to deal with all these Western people. I can't expect them to immediately come to the standard, but still I'm encouraging them. So that's the secret ingredient of success, is that no matter where we're at, no matter where someone else is at who's coming to us for guidance, we have to find some way to encourage them. It's like, yes, I understand where you are at, and here's how you get higher from there. That's it. One is not a failure if they're not perfect. The only failure is if you give up. Because any day you can pick up and say, I'm a loser, but today there's another chance. And the next day there's another chance. Because we chant every day, we're hearing the Bhagavatam every day, and these are essential ingredients for our spiritual health. Just like if you're an old man like me, you have to take your multivitamin every day, or you might, peter out after 2 p.m. So we take our vitamins, we do our exercise, and these are all part of our spiritual health regimen. We have to be encouraged that from wherever we are, we can go higher. And even if maybe we can't go higher today, at least stay where you are. Don't go away. Stay with us. Stay with the program. Prabhupada encouraged people like anything, even people that were, ones that he had given sannyas initiation to, supposedly the highest order of spiritual life. And those people, a lot of them had the same problems we all have. And Prabhupada would say to them, just don't go away. Just stay within the mission. There's always something you can do. There's always something you can do. So the real enemy is discouragement. Because if we think we just can't do it, then we tell ourselves that, then we won't do it. We won't even try. But if we're inspired to think, well, this process sounds good, I hear about people that do it and succeed. Maybe, in this life, I'm been dealt a karmic lousy hand, but still, I've got some attraction. Here I am. I'm just going to keep trying because I know that someday it's going to get better. It's going to get easier. There's always hope. That's the thing. There's always hope for someone who's willing to be honest and willing to accept some guidance, even if the guidance might be a little stern. It's like, stop doing that. You're doing this thing that's really standing in the way of your spiritual progress. Just stop it. There's a really funny comedy routine by Bob Newhart where the two words are "stop it." Somebody comes in and is complaining, and stop it. So the same can be true for us. We can see without too much prompting what we may be doing or indulging in that's preventing our own spiritual progress. We're our own worst enemies 99.99% of the time. Hare Krishna. Martin, yes.
Sorry, thank you for the nice explanation about revealing the mind. I think it's very important. It made me think what she asked also about the Prabhupada explains the devotee who falls down should still be, respected in some way. And the remorse on the heart of the devotee actually is what purifies him and make him advance. The problem is sometimes when I am more neophyte or maybe not so purified, the remorse doesn't come from the heart. It comes from the head, from the thinking process. And therefore that creates pain and that creates, but if it comes from the heart, you're really in your heart thinking, oh my God, Krishna, you're giving me so many gifts, so many wonderful experiences. And in the heart, you feel guilt, the guilt comes from a different place. From Krishna's given to Mahatma Prabhu gave a class yesterday about Krishna loving us and waiting for us. And so sometimes when we feel these rules are, sorry, I'm talking, well, my realization came from the talk, but when we think the rules are just to impose us something, that we cannot do this, we cannot do that. Instead of saying, this is allowing me to get closer to the love that I really look for, So anyways, it's a question of remorse coming from the heart or remorse coming from the head. And I think the advice of being honest to each other, so not fake, and to especially the spiritual master and other devotees is a great advice. So thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Krishna is also in your heart. Spiritual master is in your heart. The head is another thing entirely. It's like not always our friend. Yes, Prabhu.
I was just thinking that, maybe if we can not think about like what we should do or shouldn't do, or about what's right or what's wrong, and just actually try to have understanding and compassion for ourselves and for what we're trying to do, and then we'll do it because we want to, not because we think we're supposed to.
Good point. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, a great Acharya.
Thank you. Thank you again. Beautiful answers and beautiful comments from everybody. I was talking to somebody recently, the danger of normalizing things while we walk in a world that is insane. Like we go to family members, we mingle, we go to school, to our jobs, we mingle with people that it's just a lot of insane things are normal. So as we lack, what Blake was saying, as we lack understanding, or what you were saying, why I'm following this. What is the value of 4 regs?
Mm-hmm.
4 regular principles of freedom, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. Do I understand how this gives me freedom? Or am I just following because I was told? Mm-hmm. So, and as we mingle and walk through the world, guess what? We interact also. So as they ask us, so what are you all about? Or what are you all about? Do we have those, do we have that understanding, and do we have those answers that are appropriate because you can explain same thing in so many different ways. Do you have the ability to land the answer in a way that they will question, or they will be able to appreciate, number one, and it won't erode your value system that you carry with you when you're with devotees? And I sure hope we can carry as devotees around the world and be proud of, these are the 4 regular principles of freedom, and this is what helps me.
Yeah.
And I understand how, and I can articulate how it's helping me. And I sure hope you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's one thing my spiritual master always stresses is that the regulative principles, like I was saying, they're not moral principles, they're principles of cognition. If by following these principles, we're able to learn something, we're able to actually experience Krishna consciousness. And he would also say that sense gratification makes you stupid. So if you're feeling stupid, maybe you're engaging in sense gratification. Maybe I need to examine the profile of my day to see what things can be. Because like I was saying about competitive sports or baking, you have to have that goal in mind. You have to want to win. You have to want that loaf of bread. That has to be a very clear in mind goal for you. And in the same way, if you want to be completely successful as a human being, if you accept that there is a goal of life, and that the goal of life is to love God, as all these shastras are telling us, and we keep that goal very, very clearly in front of us, then there's just things that you do in order to get there. But the problem is, like you say, we spend some time here, we hang out with these folks, and we maybe absorb some of their values, and we lose sight of the goal. That's the real enemy, is losing sight of the goal, forgetting what I'm about and why I'm doing this, because otherwise it just becomes academic. It's like, I'm doing this because, I don't know, somebody told me to. But if you really want to win, if you really want that loaf of bread, if you really want love of God, you want to be happy in your life, then you have to keep that goal front and center, like all the time, and see the world through that, not have that off over here and think, well, maybe I want this in this moment, and this in this moment. That's why sadhana, the practice of daily practice, is so key. You do it every day, all day, or else it's so easy to forget and get swayed and distracted, especially in the days of perpetual distraction. Oh my God. Yes.
One last comment. I just remember Bhaktivedanta Goswami giving a very powerful for me example of what sinful activity is. Is a sinful activity is the one who cover the consciousness in a way that don't let you see the reality as it is. And so we are so confused. We want to see the reality as it is, understand that this is going to cover our consciousness so that we cannot see the reality as it is. So yeah. I really like that.
That's good. Should we stop here? Is it time?
Yeah.
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Salaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.